Today is Saturday, March 28th, 2026, and today is National Something on a Stick Day, which feels like the culinary discovery that if you take almost any food and attach a wooden handle to it, people suddenly become much more enthusiastic about eating it. Welcome to This Day in History from, wait, that's random. I'm your host, C.L. Burns. On March 28, 1939, Nationalist forces entered Madrid, effectively ending the Spanish Civil War. The conflict had begun in 1936 when military leaders, led by General Francisco Franco, launched a rebellion against Spain's elected Republican government. What followed was a brutal 3-year war that divided the country politically, culturally, and geographically. The Republicans controlled many of the major cities and represented a coalition of socialists, communists, and democratic reformers. The Nationalists, led by Franco, were supported by conservative groups, monarchists, and large parts of the military. The war also became an international proxy conflict. Germany and Italy provided military support to Franco's nationalist forces, while the Soviet Union supplied assistance to the Republican side. Volunteers from dozens of countries even joined international brigades fighting in Spain. By early 1939, the Republican government had largely collapsed. When nationalist troops entered Madrid on March 28th, organized resistance effectively ended. Within days, Franco declared victory and established a dictatorship that would rule Spain for nearly 4 decades. Civil wars are rarely just military conflicts. They tend to reshape entire societies for generations. And interestingly, sometimes a single event can reshape public perception in a similar way. Not through war, but through technology. Which brings us to something that happened 40 years later in Pennsylvania. On March 28, 1979, a partial reactor meltdown began at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It remains the most serious nuclear power incident in the history of the United States. But the story that most people remember about 3 Mile Island isn't exactly what happened. The technical problem began with a malfunction in the plant's secondary cooling system. In a nuclear power plant, the reactor core generates heat through controlled nuclear fission. That heat boils water into steam, which spins turbines that generate electricity. To keep the reactor stable, coolant must continuously circulate through the system to carry away heat. At 3 Mile Island, a valve in the cooling system became stuck open. This allowed coolant to escape, but the control room instruments incorrectly suggested the valve was closed. Because of those misleading readings, plant operators believed the reactor had too much water inside it. So they reduced the flow of emergency cooling water, unintentionally allowing the reactor core to overheat. Part of the uranium fuel inside the reactor began to melt, a condition known as a partial meltdown. However, the plant's containment structure, an enormous reinforced concrete building designed specifically for accidents, did exactly what it was built to do. It contained the damaged reactor. The amount of radiation released into the environment was extremely small, and multiple long-term studies found no measurable increase in cancer rates among surrounding populations. But the incident occurred during a time of growing public concern about nuclear energy. News coverage was often confusing or contradictory, and within days the event became widely viewed as evidence that nuclear power itself was unsafe. In reality, what 3 Mile Island mostly revealed was problems with control room design, instrumentation clarity, and operator training. The industry responded with major safety reforms and new regulatory standards. In other words, the system failed in one place, but the containment system worked exactly as intended. Sometimes technology changes the world slowly through improvements and reforms. And sometimes technology spreads so quickly that it reshapes how people communicate almost overnight. Which brings us to a much lighter moment in internet history. On March 28, 2005, the first video was uploaded to the new video sharing website YouTube. The video, titled Me at the Zoo, showed one of the site's founders standing in front of the elephants at the San Diego Zoo. The clip was only about 18 seconds long, but the concept behind the platform was revolutionary. Before YouTube, sharing videos online was complicated. Files were large, Streaming technology was limited and most websites weren't designed to host video content. YouTube simplified the process. Users could upload video files to the site, where they were automatically converted into a format that could be streamed directly in a web browser. Instead of downloading a file and opening it separately, viewers could simply press play. That change removed one of the biggest barriers to online video. Within a few years, YouTube became one of the largest platforms for media distribution in the world, hosting everything from educational lectures to comedy clips to entire cultural movements. And it all started with a short video of someone casually talking about elephants. Looking at these moments together, something interesting starts to appear. A civil war reshapes an entire nation. A technological accident forces industries to rethink safety. And a simple video sharing platform transforms how people communicate across the internet. Different events, different scales. But each one changed the system people are living inside. Anyway, those are a few things that I ended up discovering while wandering through March 28th. Stop by tomorrow and we'll see what other strange corners of history the next date decides to reveal. If you want to know more about me or the work I do, you can find everything at waitthat'srandom.com. I'm C.L. Burns, and I appreciate you stopping by.